Okay, evangelism and apologetics. CAnswers TV. I don't think that's the author. Larry Wessels is not the author. However, CAnswers TV is his tag name. That's the person who authorized this. So CAnswers TV authorized this video. I'm just trying to speak very low because other people are studying. But there's something very interesting that I want to bring up about the evangelical Orthodox Christian faith. I think that atheists miss the point of the core purpose of human beings, according to the biblical view of evangelical Christians and Orthodox Christians, either or. The core part of human beings, the core purpose, not the part, the core purpose of humanity is to trust God. It's that simple. Now, everything that the evangelical Christian talks about, morality, relationship with God, all surrounds trust in God, trust in His morality, trust in Him being good, trust in Him being loyal, trust in Him being omnipotent. All of these things are the core essential of the evangelical faith, even the evangelical Muslim. The atheist violates the core tenet. He doesn't believe. He doesn't trust that God is real. That simple. Therefore, that is the ultimate mortal sin. It is not morality. Morality is the reflection of the trust in God. Now, again, this is just my theory. It's tentative, but I think I'm onto something. Okay, the evangelical. And the reason why I bring this up is, okay, we have probably a skeptic, an atheist, maybe an agnostic that responds to CAnswers about his faith, and he says, basically, I'm a good person. I help people. I love my friends. I love my family. He says he even followed all the commandments and Christian morals inadvertently, and he's free of sin. But he doesn't believe. He doesn't believe in a God or a creator. Because of his non-belief, he's doomed to eternal hellfire. But then he gives an example of a serial rapist or killer goes to heaven if they ask for God's forgiveness. And they ask, is this fair? According to evangelical biblical perspective, okay, the morality is important to demonstrate on earth as a believer. Okay, but the core essence of morality to an evangelical Christian is trust in God, trust in His existence, trust in His morality, and trust in His goodness. No matter what. Period. Unconditional. So the atheists violated in their mind the core standard of being saved. Because you have to remember, the evangelical says, no one is perfect. Therefore, every single person, including the evangelical who's telling you this, deserves insurmountable suffering forever. Now, the evangelical will also tell you this may not make sense in our world, but we are dealing with God. It doesn't have to make sense. It's beyond our sense. It doesn't contradict the world. It's beyond our world. You have to remember James White, a very articulate, intelligent man, says this very calmly, that God can do whatever He wants to His creation because He owns you, or He should own you. What God is doing is putting out there, is letting you exist, and asking you through his prophets for him to own you, because he righteously created you, and he wants you to freely choose it. Non-belief says God doesn't exist, and that humanity is in charge of itself. When, according to the evangelical, humanity did not create itself, so it has no right to be in charge of itself. You have to understand it's an authoritarian morality and spirituality that is brutal. So, this response is not surprising. This is a common, typical response from an evangelical. Your problem is that you're judging yourself by your own standards rather than the standards set by the God of the Bible. Thus, as with all atheists, see our playlist dealing with the God-hating atheists, agnostic know-it-alls on our YouTube channel. See Answers TV with 18 videos documenting atheistic logical fallacies and denial of reality. You assume you are free of sin. Read Romans chapter 1:3. See John 3:18. Atheists are very wicked. Now see Answers TV. People, when he makes that statement, you have to remember, evangelicals are going to make statements that are bold in, let's say, I won't say that the evangelicals don't mean what they say, but the words that they use, they have different semantical meanings. When he says an atheist is very wicked, wickedness is not how us humanists view wickedness. Wickedness, fundamentally, is not trusting in God unconditionally, without question. Questioning, and when I mean question, without question, I mean questions without, the questions that we present, or any skeptic presents in any domain, which if there's no answer to, creates doubt or justifies doubt. You can ask all the questions you want, and those questions can have doubt in any other domain, but they cannot have doubt in the evangelical world. Now, that doesn't mean that the evangelicals will not find it interesting, find it curious why God has such a harsh standard of making somebody that's slightly imperfect suffer forever. They said they probably don't understand the fullness of God's justice, but whatever. They still love God, and God can do whatever he wants, because fundamentally, he created you. He created your wife, he created everything, he created love itself. So therefore, whatever he does is right. Now, look at the dealing with God-hating atheists. Now, the problem with evangelicals, when we say that, well, we don't hate God, we don't believe in him. The very fact is, in their reality, God exists. And if you hate any conception, any depiction of God, if you call him a sinner or evil, regardless if in your world, in the carnal world, in our material universe, which we should judge reality, you hate God, because they presuppose this God exists, and this God did exactly what you said in the Bible. He created internal fire. As a matter of fact, you can disagree. See, and then this is why I disagree with the evangelicals, because I'm not an evangelical, but within their own words, okay, they can't disagree with God. They disagree. Many Christians say, well, I disagree with hell. I disagree with internal suffering, but God is God. No. For you to be perfect, a perfect evangelical Christian, you should agree with it. And if you are in God's place, you should be comfortable in doing it forever. If not, then you're sinning. You're imperfect. You're sinning, and it's a major sin because you're going against God's will. God wants you to believe that people like atheists should suffer forever, and you should believe it. But many of the evangelicals are like, look, I don't agree with this, but it says in the book, and look, man, you better believe. That's why I have to be a hard ass, man. I gotta follow my God. Remember, the evangelical worldview is an authoritarian, absolute authoritarian, not authoritative. This notion of authoritative, I mean, where did these guys get this from? It's not authoritative at all. It's not humanist. It's an authoritative doctrine. Simple as that. There's no, you can try to make it complex or try to be sophisticated in your language. Whether it be Jehovah's Witnesses, whether it be modern Catholics, the bottom line is this. They believe that God dictates morality, and they are the messengers of that morality. It's that simple. So atheists are very wicked. Before our atheists use this as evidence that this guy sees atheists as bad people, he's simply going to say, when I mean wicked, I mean deviating from God's will. The most essential evil is deviating from God's will. It's relative. I mean, God's will can be violent. It can be non-violent. The morality is pretty relative. If you look at the Old Testament and New Testament, the morality is relative to God's will. What I think that maybe the evangelical is saying is that God's absolute, in Him being the absolute authority of what will happen, what should happen. That's perhaps what they mean by absolute morality. So, just wanted to point that out, and I'm going to take any comments. Thank you.